Greetings, all you people out there who keep witnessing your own death, and welcome to Undeclared Bajor.
I guess not that any of the other ones aren't super specific.
Yeah.
But...
Lots of those people out there. This is Undeclared Bajor, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine rewatch. My name is Fletcher. About to say hello is Data.
What up?
Today we're going to recap, discuss, and rate Season 3, Episode 17, Visionary. Alternate title, Slaughterhouse Miles.
Interesting. Okay. I mean... Just because he keeps dying, it's like Slaughterhouse 5 doesn't have really any relation, does it?
Well, like the guy in Slaughterhouse 5, it's like he keeps flashing back and forward in his life.
Does he? Man, okay. It's been a while since I read about that story, apparently. I've never actually read it.
So. I read it like a long time ago in like high school. But the general gist is like he's this American soldier who's a prisoner of war in Dresden while it's being firebombed by the Allies. And he keeps flash forwarding to his like future as a married man after the war and like back and forth. And he meets some aliens and stuff too.
Aliens just hanging out in Dresden.
Yeah, I forget the whole thing. It's a really weird book.
This thing reminds me of there is a Brandon Sanderson short story where like this guy goes to this very dangerous island where all like nature all over is trying to kill you. And he has a bird that gives him this special ability to like see his own death slightly in the future. So he'll see an image of his dead body over like a few feet away, and he's like, oh, and then he can tell by what the dead body looks like. He's like, oh, there's like this specific thing that would kill me over there, so I need to avoid that.
So it's kind of like the Omega-7 machine or whatever from Galaxy Quest.
I guess, except, yeah, he's not actually traveling in time. He's just seeing the... but yeah, that story is called Sixth of the Dusk, in case anyone was interested.
Sixth of the Dusk. Yeah. I wonder if there's a place where I could hear more discussion of Brandon Sanderson stories.
There probably is, if you follow the link in the description.
Ooh.
To the Sander Lanch podcast.
Watch this be the one time I like accidentally cut that out of the description something.
You put the link in to like the Picard episodes that we did, and people are like, "Hey, what? This isn't that."
Trolling. So okay, title review. This is the part where we do the title review, right?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, right after we talk about the title and the alternate title seems like the most logical place to me.
Yeah. I'm gonna give it like a D. I think it's pretty weak.
I think it's an interesting little pun, but I don't think it's a super strong one. It's more like a C for me.
Okay. Just because he's not really having visions, he's really traveling to the future. So I guess it's kind of like visions, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. They're not. Yeah. At first they think it's a hallucination, but no. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's another one of those that's vague enough that it could be many episodes.
Yeah, I think they could have done better.
I mean, the Slaughterhouse Miles was sitting right there, apparently.
Yeah, I don't think that's quite their style, but
no, not really.
They don't like. They apparently really love to rip off like well-known literature and Shakespeare and
I was about to say, yeah, they got Shakespeare quotes all over the place
and musicals, but they don't like to directly reference them. But yeah, our discussion will contain full spoilers for the series up through this episode. However, we will try to keep spoilers for later in the series to an appropriate minimum. We won't reveal anything too big, like when Morn overthrows the Founders and establishes the show's new villain, the Demornian.
I mean, you know, Morn had to do something after all this time building him up.
Right. It's like, what a sleeper character. What a payoff for Morn.
But, you know, it doesn't happen until Like, they just outrage more, and like they close Quark's bar, and he's like, "That's the last straw."
It's like, that's it. I'm conquering the galaxy.
Yeah. I mean, I no longer have anything else to do.
All will kneel before morn. So Quark's like, I liked him better before. This episode originally aired February 27th, 1995. It was written by John Shirley. Story by Ethan H. Kalk?
Sure.
Yeah. That's how I'm going to choose to pronounce that. And directed by Reza Badi.
Yep, our good friend.
Yeah, he is just churning them out.
Let's see. What is looking up these two others that were
okay? I'm gonna make a prediction. I don't know anything about
right.
it. They have no other credits and are completely mysterious, and nobody knows anything about them.
So it mentions in the notes on this one, before I even get into that, it mentions in the notes that the Ira Steven Behr. Okay, so Ira Steven Behr asked a friend of his, John Shirley, who was well versed in complicated science fiction concepts, to write the teleplay. And then there's a quote from Ira. He hadn't written for television, and he wanted to take a shot at it. I won't say it was the most pleasant experience he ever had in his career. So apparently this guy, John Shirley, hails from Houston, Texas, and began writing in the 1970s. His most significant cyberpunk novels are considered to be City Come a Walkin' and those of the Eclipse trilogy, also known as A Song Called Youth trilogy.
Ooh.
His short story collection Black Butterflies won the Bram Stoker Award for Horror Writers of America and the International Horror Guild Award. His other novels and novellas include The Brigade, In Darkness Waiting, Silicon Embrace, Spider Moon, and Crawlers.
So he's got some cred.
Yeah. Best known for his screenwriting work on the 1994 fantasy action thriller The Crow, where he wrote the original script for the film.
You know, I've still never seen The Crow.
I haven't either.
So,
in addition to Deep Space Nine, he submitted work to the series Poltergeist: The Legacy and VR5, and has also written scripts for animated series such as Batman Beyond, The Real Ghostbusters, and Filmation's Brave Star.
I've never heard of that, but Batman Beyond and Real Ghostbusters, there's some more cred.
Yeah, I like both of those shows. And then more recently, he's been doing tie-in novels and novelizations of feature films, such as he novelized the films Constantine and Doom, the latter starring Carl Urban and The Rock.
The novelization of the Carl Urban The Rock Doom movie.
Yep.
I feel like that might be a little bit of a career step backwards after winning the Bram Stoker Award or whatever, but...
Right, yeah, it seems, yeah.
The novelization could be great. I don't know.
He's written lyrics for such bands as Blue Oyster Cult.
Ooh.
So this is a guy who's done various kinds of writing in his career, is what I'm getting out of this.
Blue Oyster Cult, that's pretty good.
But yeah, I think that this is his only DS9 contribution.
I was gonna say, it's like, maybe I should like check out one of his books and do a book report for next time he does a Deep Space Nine episode.
One of these cyberpunk books that he's well known for.
I love the good old classic cyberpunks. Their vision of the 1990s stretched into the future.
And Ethan H. Kalk sold this story on his very first pitch session to Deep Space Nine. He pitched numerous ideas before finally landing his second sale, which contributing to the story for the episode Children of Time. So he does two. This is his first one, though.
We haven't had Children of Time yet, have we?
No, yeah, that's I think that's 5th season or something.
Okay.
So let's see, what else has he done? Did some story elements for the fan production Star Trek New Voyages, and then co-authored the fan film Star Trek Of Gods and Men. So he seems to write Star Trek and not anything else. Huh. Also, when I go to Ethan H. Kalk's wiki page here, it was like, under the list of others who viewed this also viewed, the second item is underwear. So there is a wiki page on the Memory Alpha.
There's a Memory
Star
Alpha
Trek
underwear article. Okay.
And when you look at it, it's mostly pictures of characters in their underwear.
I'm a little
I mean, not even like, I mean, I don't know. I don't remember how many main characters have been in their underwear on the show, but it's like, here's Corey Sung and Carol Marcus from the, not the original Carol Marcus from the J.J. Abrams verse.
Sure. I remember that famous underwear scene from Star Trek Benedict Cumberbatch Strikes or whatever it was.
Yeah, whatever that one was called. And then there's Travis Mayweather, so they got a guy in there also.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Anyway, random side track.
Someone perving on Memory Alpha. Let's be real.
Apparently. And they're like, Ethan Calk, eh? Let's check out this guy.
That put some naughty ideas in some people's heads.
I guess so.
So I could look at some more Calk. All right. So let's dive into this episode. It's a little bit of a... It's got some ins and outs.
No joke.
So Chief O'Brien finds himself laying on the floor of Ops, and is soon informed that he got a blast of plasma and a light case of radiation poisoning.
See, the thing is, when we start an episode with dude waking up on the floor,
right?
No introduction to that, my instant thought is, oh, this is going to, like, all of this is a hallucination,
or a holodeck or something.
Holodeck or something, yeah. Like, and he just is not going to realize it.
And then the Romulans show up, and you're like, whoa.
When have these guys ever been on Deep Space Nine?
Although I do love me some Romulans.
It's true, yeah.
So the chief stumbles off the bridge to do some, quote, light duty. So what? I don't know what he's going to do. I think he's just going to get drunk at Quark's, but...
Well, apparently light duty does not include crawling around in the Jeffries tubes or whatever, so that's the one thing we know about it.
I like... In this scene, Chief O'Brien's work ethic more closely resembles my own. It's like, take some light duty. I'm like, I'm way ahead of you. I'm out of here. But yeah, so he leaves just as word comes in that a transport of Romulans is arriving. As Sisko and Kira mosey casually down the promenade to meet their Romulan visitors, they happen across Odo and team arresting a drunk Klingon, and learn that coincidentally some Klingons are going to be on the station at the same time the Romulans are.
Sisko needs to keep better track. He's like, I didn't know there were any Klingons on the station.
You think Odo would be like, oh, dude, Klingons. I find this timing very suspicious, but... At the airlock, they greet their Romulan visitors, only two of whom speak and have names.
Yep.
So I like these two Romulans introduce themselves, and the other Romulans just stay silent and are not introduced.
Yeah. Well, and you almost never see them. Like, the other ones stay outside the doors to the conference room the whole time, so you see, like, their backs every once in a while.
It's like, do not even give these guys names. We might wind up having to pay them.
Right, exactly.
Oh, Jones is there, too.
Right, yeah. Can't have an episode without Jones.
Jones spotted. I was thinking they might as well just have had one Romulan person, because there's no, like, distinction between these two Romulans at all.
Well, it's male Romulan and female Romulan.
Right. They just take turns being Romulans.
Yeah, it's like, which one are you in charge? I assume the guy who introduced himself first, but it's really unclear.
Yeah. It just... Like, I can just imagine John Shirley or whoever writing this script, and he's like, then Romulan 1 says, and then Romulan 2 says...
Well, in the original pitch, Kalk had used Nausicaans as the villains, but it was determined that they were not familiar enough. So he went back and created this like Romulan Klingon plot.
Okay. Well, I mean this is way better because it like ties into the whole. Also, no mention of what happened to that Romulan lady that used to be hanging around.
Like, I thought maybe this is where she could show up again, but yeah, she's gone.
But the Romulans don't make much chit-chat and are impatient to get the latest intel about the Dominion.
I don't even know why you have to be here. Can't we just send you that?
Yeah. Meanwhile, in Quark's, O'Brien helps Quark set up his new dartboard. Quark is skeptical of this new game and nearly puts out Morn's eye by just, like, hurling some darts at him.
Well, to be fair, O'Brien does just hand them to him and it's like, here, try to throw, without ever demonstrating how the game works.
Yeah, it's not very good. It's like, okay, this is how you do it.
I like that in the previous one, they were playing darts in the cargo hold or whatever, and O'Brien's just like, I don't want to have to go to the cargo hold to play. I want to be able to drink and dart.
There's no booze in here. This sucks.
Let's force Quark to hang this up.
So O'Brien tries to show Quark how it's done, but suddenly he flashes to outside the bar, where he sees Quark arguing with himself being Chief O'Brien.
O'Brien, yeah, not Quark.
Yeah, that would have been also weird. About some holosuites that sustained Klingon damage, as holosuites are wont to do.
But they pay double though, so it's okay.
Yeah, that's right. They paid, and this is a very important thing. I'm going to get back to this later. But yeah, Chief O'Brien vanishes, then reappears at his dart game like nothing had happened at all, but then he passes out. He checks in with Bashir, who in true Bashir form can find nothing unusual, I suspect because he doesn't really look. He's like, well, I mean, you had the radiation, and that probably made you pass out and have some hallucinations, I don't know. Sisko and Kira meet with the Romulans in the conference room. The Romulans are annoyed that they don't have any intel about the Dominion. They're like, and they're just like, why don't you just ask Odo? And then they're like, well, because Odo learned about the Dominion the same time we did? And they're like, yeah, but he's a changeling, so he must know stuff. And then they're like, also, when we gave you that cloaking device, in exchange for intel, we assumed, you'd go flying around in the Gamma Quadrant cloaked, gathering intel, instead of doing nothing.
I mean, the first time they tried that, they got captured and
that's
stuff,
true.
So
that's true.
Your cloaking device sucks, okay?
But Sisko's like, yeah, we have basically been doing nothing. Chief O'Brien walks down the promenade and is met by Quark, who wants his holosuites fixed. O'Brien begins to have the same argument he witnessed before, but has a moment of realization and looks over to see himself watching. Quark sees it too and is like, you know what, never mind.
Yeah.
And just walks off.
Yeah, you clearly have more important stuff to deal with. I'll just leave you alone. I love Quark's not curious. Yeah. He's not like weirded out. He's just like, oh, you've got some weird Starfleet shit going on. Okay, yeah, I'll just go.
So I'm in the middle of something. I'm intruding. I'll come back later. But notably, Quark does not at this time mention that the Klingons paid double. Dax investigates and finds evidence of a temporal disturbance, of course. And then she starts to techno-babble about how radiation can make people travel in time or something. When mercifully, Miles has another flash. This time he's in the middle of a bar fight in Quark's, which, I don't want to get in any stereotypes here, he happily jumps into.
Well, he jumps into because, like, the other him is about to get stabbed.
True.
So he would prefer not to die.
But, I mean, he's ready to go. But he stops himself from being stabbed by a Klingon, and then a chair flies at him, and then he flashes back to Dax's speech, but then he passes out. So they go back to the infirmary where Bashir does some actual tests and reports that the time shifting is causing nerve damage or something. They gotta fix it. I don't know, this isn't... whatever. Sisko says that Dax is investigating, and O'Brien says, good, if anyone can figure this out, it's Dax, throwing kind of like sidelong glances at Bashir.
I didn't take that from it, but I was like, you're suddenly really confident in Dax's ability. I don't feel like you've ever been that confident in her before.
No, that's the way I choose to interpret it. It's like, yeah, I'm going to put my fate in Dax's hands. Thank you very much.
See, if I'm O'Brien, even after it's been like 3 years now, I'd be like, can we maybe get Data? Like, I'm real confident that he could figure it out.
Though, like... the whole time, especially towards the end of the episode, I was thinking, like, if only like Geordi and Data and them were here, they would have come up with some much better stuff. But you work with what you got, I guess. Kira comes in to tell Sisko that the Romulans have all kinds of invasive demands, like they want to read people's diaries and stuff. Sisko directs her to comply within reason and try to be diplomatic. Kira assures Sisko she's always diplomatic.
Like, Kira is the most unself-aware person on the show. It's amazing.
She's like, what? She's like, I'm so diplomatic. Cut to Kira yelling at the Romulans, who seem to think something is shady about the time Odo and Kira abandoned the Defiant to run off and find the Changeling planet, while the rest of the Defiant got captured and put in the Dominion Matrix or whatever.
Nothing shady there.
Yeah, you remember that whole thing.
I mean, to be fair, it's clearly not in any way her fault.
Right.
Like, she was literally unconscious, and as soon as she woke up, was like, no, wait, why did we leave the ship? We need to go back.
Right.
But although she's also trying to protect Odo. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, we saw that. The Romulans didn't. To be fair to them.
Yeah, no, it's true. But I just like, she's just like yelling at him, and the guy and the Romulans are looking at each other like, methinks she doth protest too much.
She's getting a little too intense about this. So they theorize that Odo has the hots for Kira, which this enrages Kira, and she's basically just like, just take the cloaking device and go away. I'm sick of you guys. Down in Quark's, O'Brien and Bashir play darts while they wait for the fight to break out. Bashir insists it's pointless because Quark banned the Klingons from the bar. Immediately, a group of Klingons comes down the stairs.
But they weren't in the bar. They were in the holosuite, so it's okay.
Right. And then Quark says, now they're paying me triple. But he never said they were paying me double before. So...
Well, I mean, you don't necessarily have to have said they were paying... regardless of whether anyone knew they were paying him double, they are now paying him triple, so the statement still stands.
I mean, it just really sounded like it was meant to be a continuation of that earlier conversation, which this version of Quark never had.
It's true. Maybe he had that conversation with somebody else.
Yeah, that's true. He could just be going around telling everybody, he's like, oh, the Klingons are paying me double. He's like, now they're paying me triple. Anyway, the Klingons make a beeline for some nearby Romulans and start making trouble, because, of course, that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's Klingons and Romulans. What do you expect?
Yeah. At that moment, Kira is in Odo's office telling him about the whole crush accusation, which he's like, what? Huh? What? That's ridiculous. Then they get a call about the fight. The fight plays out mostly like O'Brien saw it the first time, except this time he manages to avoid getting knocked to the ground, but the other O'Brien from the past still shows up and helps, and also still gets a chair thrown at him.
Yep.
So a little bit changed. Almost immediately, O'Brien has another flash. This time he sees himself doing some maintenance on a panel and getting zapped to death by something in the panel or whatever. Which he kind of causes himself when he's like, hey, Miles! And then he's like, what?
Well, I don't know that, like, if he hadn't been distracted for 1 second, I think he still wouldn't have seen the thing that shoots him. But
yeah. This time he doesn't do the thing where he flashes back to where he was and then passes out. This time he wakes up, he's already in the infirmary. So,
yep.
This is escalating or something. O'Brien does something I absolutely would not do and takes Sisko and Odo to the panel he saw kill him. I would be like, I'm going to stay here. Can you guys go check that out?
I think that, it's not going to do anything until you open it, is the assumption. So I don't think I'd be that scared. I mean, if, like, when Odo's like, okay, I'm going to open it, I definitely would not be anywhere nearby. But up to that point.
Yeah. But there's nothing wrong with the panel now. But, and they do a little bit of logicking here, all his time jumps seem to be about 5 hours, so maybe something will happen to the panel in the next 5 hours. So Odo plants a hidden camera to watch it.
Some good detective work.
Yeah.
Although it proves to be almost useless.
Oh yeah. Well, no, he sees some stuff, I guess, or detects some stuff. I don't know.
Detects some stuff, yeah.
In the meantime, Dax has made a discovery. Apparently, a singularity is orbiting around nearby and keeps latching onto the Chief's radioactivity and sending him forward in time or something. Of course, there's a singularity involved somehow. Kira shows up and announces that she's moved the Romulans into the quarters next to that crazy wall panel.
Because no one told her not to mess with that.
Yeah. Sisko's like, interesting. Let's do nothing and see what happens. Which I'm like, interesting strategy, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's one way to go. I do love that this is the point when Dax is like, oh, there's a weird singularity out here, that I'm just like, come on. You have Romulans on the station. There's a weird invisible singularity floating around out there. How are you not putting 2 and 2 together?
Come on, Dax, you can do this. Although, should it be so easy to detect a singularity through a cloak like that? I don't know.
Well, I think the fact that they were having trouble detecting it at all, and it was like, oh yeah, we didn't see this before because of technobabble. That's the biggest giveaway to me, where I'm just like, if it was some normal singularity, you would have seen it, right? So something weird is going on here.
But at the same time, like, I don't know. If they are able to detect it, it seems like they'd be able to turn this into a cloaked Romulan finding technology.
That's true, yeah.
So, maybe just like their cloaking device is broken or something. We do know that these cloaking devices have chronotons in them or something.
Or something, yep.
Yeah. There's a lot of or something in this episode.
This is a big technobabble episode.
Yeah. Yeah. So Odo reports that someone has beamed a spy device into the panel. And he deduces that it must have come from the station somewhere, since there are no ships nearby. Even though supposedly there's one Klingon ship there for repairs, and the ship that took the Romulans there to have the meeting.
And Morn's ship is probably here.
Oh yeah, Morn's got a ship, right? So
yeah.
Although, I don't know, maybe that's not a very big ship. It doesn't have a transporter.
Who knows?
Also technically, like, the runabouts and the Defiant are supposedly all there, although.
Also true. We've also seen the Dominion just, like, beam.
Right.
With no ships nearby, supposedly, either, so.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to disagree with your police work here, Odo. But it turns out to be true, so whatever. Odo likes the Klingons for this, but plans to investigate everyone, including and possibly especially Quark. When in doubt, investigate Quark.
I do love that line where it's like, you think Quark might be involved? He's like, I always investigate Quark. It's just like it's the most logical thing in the universe.
He's baffled by the idea that you wouldn't investigate Quark.
Yeah. Which, to be fair, he's not off base.
Oh no, he's 100% correct. He needs to be investigating Quark. Quark does some shady stuff. And then we forget about it the next episode.
It's true. He gets away with so much stuff that way.
Yep. So Bashir and O'Brien hang out in Quark's and figure that enough time has passed that O'Brien has now cheated death. Quark comes by and proposes that O'Brien uses his time traveling to help cheat at Dabo, which sends O'Brien into another flash where he sees himself dead in the infirmary. Bashir shows up and calmly spouts a bunch of medical jargon, taking his time getting to the part where he gives the vital information needed to stop the death from happening.
Yeah, like, you don't know how long O'Brien's been here or how long he's going to be able to stay. Why are you not getting right away to you need to do this?
He's like, you want me to take you through the whole autopsy? And O'Brien's like,
yeah.
No!
He's like, I can show you the report. And what are you doing?
I'd be like, oh my gosh, through this incredible miracle, I have this one chance to save your life. Here is the information you need. But he's just like, oh, hey, what's up?
Yeah,
Okay, but there's a subtlety to this scene, which is that Bashir is fully aware of the time jumps. So, like, presumably up to even the previous one where he got shot by the thing in the panel or whatever.
Yeah.
The rule that seems to be set up here, basically, I'm saying, is that, like, when O'Brien gets to the future, it's the future as if he had never had the vision.
Yeah.
But then the second time around, he has that extra knowledge or whatever.
Right.
So Odo takes Cisco to the empty quarters, or some empty quarters, where he shows that the replicator has been rigged into a little transporter using a device that would seem to be of Klingon origin. Oh, also he did some digging around, and it turns out that those Klingons are a high-level Klingon intelligence team.
Yeah, this is the part that I have the biggest issue with, because establishing that you can turn a replicator into a transporter is a very dangerous precedent to set, I feel like.
True. But Cisco's just like, why didn't you just tell me that up front instead of wasting my time recreating your whole investigation? And I just wanted to show you, like, how good I am or whatever.
Yeah, sometimes I need to remind you that I'm really good at what I do. Also, Odo keeps, like, in the last 2 or 3 episodes, I feel like he's referenced talking to a friend at Starfleet Intelligence or whatever. And I'm like, when did you make all these friends, Odo? Like, you don't like people.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he's just networking, you know? He's going to conferences and stuff. But anyway, Odo detains the Klingons and tells them to behave or he'll tattle to Klingon intelligence that they got caught, which shuts them up, and that puts an end to the whole Klingon aspect of the episode.
Yep, they're done now.
Yeah.
Do they ever get out of jail? Who knows?
Yeah. Well, he said he was going to let them go, so.
Well, yeah, if they talked, but they didn't talk. That we saw.
So yeah, we don't know how that whole thing turns out. And the episode stops caring.
Yeah, pretty much.
Then after Bashir presumably stops O'Brien from dying with the knowledge that O'Brien brought from the future, The crew meet up in ops and science babble some more about singularities and radiation or whatever. And then O'Brien has another flash. And this time he sees the station get evacuated, then blow up. And then the wormhole blows up too. But I don't think he ever mentions that to anybody.
I feel like he does because they, like, Dax or someone references it later.
Maybe. But when he comes back, Kira delivers the most natural line of dialogue you ever heard. And I quote, "Could you tell if you were looking at internal explosions, which might indicate some kind of sabotage or accident, or external explosions, which might indicate we were under attack?" That's totally the way people talk.
That's the way I talk. I don't know what you're talking about.
Sisko follows that up with, and I quote, "If the destruction of the station is the result of an attack or sabotage, we don't want to alarm our enemy and make him trigger events that we're trying to avoid." So my respect for both actors went way up, because those lines almost sounded natural when they delivered them.
So there's a lot of in the notes on here. There's a lot of back patting of themselves because everyone feels that this was a very clever, like, time travel story that, like, no one had done before and very different from what you normally see. And so there's the thing where Ronald D. Moore is like, this is a very cool story because it was different from the way we normally do time travel. Hadn't played this yet. Seeing yourself die, station explode. It just became fun to play those scenes out, to enjoy the plot and not get bogged down in, oh my god, we're changing history. You can play the gag of seeing yourself dead and bitching at the doctor because he didn't save your life. Which, that is a good gag. I'll give you that.
Yeah. Never been done before. We never saw the Enterprise blow up and then they had to go back in time and stop it or anything. So O'Brien suggests that maybe Bashir can shoot some more radiation at him and cause him to travel to the future to get more information. So, okay, interesting plan. Sisko points out that he only travels 5 hours at a time, but Bashir rambles on something about adjusting the radiation decay constant to match the frequency of the singularity and calibrate how far he jumps. So, okay, whatever. Cut to, they've done whatever they were talking about. Bashir puts a time travel gizmo on O'Brien's arm and sends him off.
So, apparently in this scene, Bashir is using a tool to adjust the armband. Okay. And if you look closely, it is the warp nacelle from a Romulan warbird model that has been painted gray and had blinking lights added.
Nice. Good kit bashing there. Prop designers.
Yeah.
I applaud you. So, yeah, O'Brien wakes up in his own quarters on the floor. Then he goes into his bedroom to wake his alternate up, who is now sleeping for some reason and seems to have no knowledge of the station blowing up.
Well, I mean, we established that, like, because when he first went into the future and talked to O'Brien on the shuttle or the runabout or whatever, he was like, yeah, I was asleep, and then I got up and was just heading to ops, and the alarm went off, so I ran right here. So I can think it makes sense that he runs into himself sleeping.
But that O'Brien should have the benefit of the knowledge of the previous time he jumped. So why is it, like, he's like, okay, well, we're expecting the station to blow up in a few hours, but I guess I'm going to catch a couple of Z's.
Interesting point, that's true.
So either this armband totally changed the rules of time travel, although he is aware of the time jumping in general.
Right.
Just not of the last time he himself jumped. So maybe he won't get that knowledge until 5 hours from that jump when it'll suddenly download into his brain or something. I don't know. It's a little inconsistency, but I guess we can always wave it off by they designed this new time machine or whatever.
Yep. I guess he'll never really get that knowledge because he jumps out of that timeline.
Yeah. But they go to ops together just in time to see a Romulan warbird decloak and attack. Immediately, PJ's O'Brien figures out the whole thing and explains it to our O'Brien. But regular O'Brien is moments from death, so he gives his armband to PJ's O'Brien, who goes back in time to stop the attack.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like that should work at all.
This is easily the most nonsensical part of the episode.
He's just like, it's already set for the return journey. And I'm like, but isn't it dependent on, like, how much radiation you have in you?
Yeah. So if the armband can just be put on anybody in be used for a one-way backwards trip, then what was the point of the whole other, like, all those other steps of the plan? Like, why wouldn't Bashir just design the armband and be like, okay, let's just wait and see what happens. Then, like, at the crucial moment, put the armband on and go back in time. And
oh, yeah. Like when they sent that message back in Data's brain to stop the Enterprise blowing up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is why I'm saying we need, like, Data in LaForge. Because, like, they would have gamed this out way better.
You just can't trust Bashir to do anything, is the thing.
Yeah. It's like, Bashir has his qualities, but... Let's run this by Dax first before we go through this whole plan. Anyway, PJ's Brian goes back in time, stops the attack. The secret Romulan plan to destroy the wormhole and keep the Dominion out of the Alpha Quadrant is foiled, dooming millions of brave soldiers to their eventual deaths.
Yep.
PJ's O'Brien steps back into O'Brien's life because they are essentially the same guy.
Yeah, I like... There's a quote in here about, like... At first, oh yeah, here it is. It's like, the fact that O'Brien from now on is not technically the same O'Brien as before is at first an astonishing revelation, but in practice means nothing. And then this reviewer goes on to say, unfortunately, the same can be said for the rest of the episode.
Yeah, so O'Brien and Bashir hang out in Quarks. O'Brien has some future knowledge of dart throws and Dabo spins and such that I'm highly doubtful would turn out the exact same way.
Well, so Bashir's throwing the dart. I feel like there's no way it goes exactly the same after you've spent time explaining that this is what you're about to hit when you throw it. Like, that would 100% change your stance and stuff.
Yes, well, I mean, because he's like, you know, presumably originally they weren't having that conversation, and he wasn't like, oh, how's this going to hit and all this stuff.
The Dabo wheel, I have less trouble believing.
Yeah, maybe. I mean... The Dabo wheel could be based on a pseudo-random algorithm that was always going to, like, produce the same results or something. Because, as you know, true randomness is very difficult to find. Mm-hmm. Slot machines have, like, microchips inside them that are actually doing, like, highly sophisticated calculations that just seem random. But, like...
Yep. You can't program a machine to be random.
Yeah, exactly. You need, like, decaying radioactive isotopes and stuff for true randomness.
Like the box, the cat box.
Yeah, exactly. You need it.
Schrodinger's cat.
Schrodinger's cat. The thought experiment, which was designed to disprove the Copenhagen interpretation and is often used as a teaching tool to explain it. Anyway.
Yep.
Anyway, the end of the episode.
So, it seems like a major complaint that in reaction to this episode, from not only reviewers that are listed here, but even from some of the people who worked on the episode, is that it's like a Next Generation episode.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It's like, this is a very Next Gen feeling plot.
Yeah, it's like this one guy says, yet another Next Generation story that wandered into the wrong studio on the Paramount lot by accident.
Yeah. But I mean, Next Gen's over now. Where else are you going to sell those plots?
That's true. And so, even Ira Stephen Bear is like, I don't dislike the episode, but it really seems like one we could have done on Next Generation, and I prefer our shows to be Deep Space Nine centric.
Sure. I mean, there was a little bit of a Deep Space Nine, like, ongoing story with... sort of
the Romulan and although the fact that we almost never see the Romulans just kind of even gives even more of a next gen impression.
Yeah.
Although I wouldn't mind seeing the Romulans more. It's just up to this point we've seen them like a couple times.
Yeah, like you said, like when weird stuff is going on and the Romulans just happen to be there, you're like, oh man, some crazy Romulan mind games are going on.
Apparently, after the show aired, a lot of people were making comparisons, like in the discussion, to the Time Squared episode of The Next Generation, which is the one where, like, Picard from 6 hours in the future shows up.
Oh, man.
And Ronald D. Moore, who did an uncredited rewrite on this episode, is very unhappy with that. And he's like, I watched the episode again after he saw all these people making this comparison. He said, I watched that Times Squared episode again, and it's so ponderous. They agonize about what to do the whole show. All right already. We just quickly decided we weren't going to be that concerned and just went forward.
I just barely remember that episode, so...
Yeah, it's a season 2, and it's not one of the better season 2s.
I might need to go revisit that. Did Ronald D. Moore write the great lines such as... could you tell if you were looking at internal explosions, which might indicate some kind of sabotage or accident, or external explosions, which might indicate we were under attack?
It is unclear who might have written that specific line, yeah.
It felt like such a non, like, Star Trek writer line. I was like...
Honestly, it didn't stand out that much to me until you repeated it a couple times, and now I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, I kind of see it.
Yeah. Like, it was just like those 2 lines back to back. I was like, what is this writing? And also, I've been listening to a lot of the 372 pages We Won't Get Back podcast. And it's like, they do a segment called, like, the dumb sentence of the week, where basically they just love, like, picking out really badly written sentences and then, like, making fun of them. So I think my ear was just kind of, like, attuned to that also.
That makes sense. What else is in here? So the blowing up the station was a big thing.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking, it's like, man, how much did they put into that, like, blowing up the station effect? They must have had to build a whole model and...
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff in here about that. So basically, one of the notes is, destroying the station proved to be the biggest special effect of the episode. Well, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
But there's a note that the producers of Deep Space Nine were now much more interested in showing feature-quality special effects than they had been during the run of The Next Generation. So Deep Space Nine was granted a much larger budget for visual effects than its predecessor was. So that resulted in being able to do more stuff like this. But what basically happened here was that it says they pulled 2 new castings from the original 6-foot mold for making the station. And so the duplicates were very similar, except they didn't bother to stick in any of the lighting elements that are in the main model.
Sure.
And so he says, the special effects master, Gary Monock, says, we rigged it so that it would go off in about 10 stages. 10 separate explosions that went off within a half second.
Huh.
And so they shot it with a high-speed camera at 10 to 15 times normal speed. And they rigged the 2 models a little bit differently so they could decide after filming which explosion they liked better.
Sure.
And he says, there's a little bit of everything that goes into making one of these explosions. There's some glitter, black powder, rubber cement, sparkle flash, sometimes a little high explosive primer cord. Oh, but at this time, CGI is being used more and more in television. So they were like having to defend the decision to use a live model. And the VFX coordinator for the show is like, look, you can't get the same effect with a computer. You don't get the fireballs, the shards, the pieces flying away. When you're working on a big scale like this, there's nothing like blowing up a big model. It's just beautiful.
Yeah. Especially like, 1995 computer effects.
And apparently they shot like several like angles and stuff of these models blowing up, and they only ended up using a little tiny bit of what they shot in the episode.
Huh.
But to counter, that very expensive special effect, the footage of the Romulan Warbird is actually taken from the episode of The Next Generation, The Defector.
Oh, nice. Yeah, why not? They honestly, they didn't even have to use an effect. They could just have been like, oh no, Romulans are shooting at us. And I probably would have bought it, but...
Yeah, they do that thing where they shake in their seats.
Right. It's like, oh no, it's the Romulans. And then like cut to a Romulan Warbird for 1 second and cut back.
What else is in here? So, they had to do a lot of the special shots where they like lock off the camera and film the same thing twice to get Colomini in both spots. And it was like, we didn't want to use green screen effects because according to this, or blue screen at the time. I don't think green screen was around or was being used. It was still blue, but they said that blue screen is very time consuming. And so it would have taken 9 days to film, and they only had 7 days to film. So they had to do the locking off the camera type stuff. And apparently the director says that it's annoying to create these 2 people when the 2 people are Colomini, because he prefaces, like, he's a really wonderful actor. I like him a lot, but you can't keep him on the set. He always has to go outside and get a little fresh air. So when he's in every scene twice, it takes a long time to get all of this.
Yeah. I need to look at those shots again, because usually when you do that, don't you have to, like, mat off part of the frame or whatever, and then, like, for the first pass, and then you cover up the other part? So it looked pretty seamless, although you could always kind of tell that, like, something wasn't quite matching up, but...
Yeah, I mean, it's the 90s.
Yeah.
You can't expect too much, but I thought it looked pretty good.
Yeah. The part where the first time, or I guess the second time, when it's over his shoulder, seeing himself, like, across, I thought that one looked like the one standing on the, like, ledge of the promenade or whatever looked a little different, but I don't know. I think also in that scene they had to do the effect where he, like, shimmers away, so that probably had something to do with it. Although you'd think they'd be pretty used to doing that effect by now on Star Trek.
You would think, right? Yeah, that's good. That's a pretty standard. Like, oh no, we have to change the transporter shimmer to a different kind of shimmer.
Right. So, it's going to cost us $1 million.
Okay, what else do we got in here? So, Bashir uses hyronalin to treat the radiation poisoning, and that is a reference to a original series episode where they use hyronalin for radiation poisoning. Oh. And that was added by Ron Moore, who says, there's a lot of references from the original series rattling around in my head because I watched it fanatically as a kid. Sometimes it's easier to remember those references than the stuff I worked on just a few years ago with The Next Generation.
Nice. Yeah, throw it in. I would not have guessed that was something that had ever been mentioned before, so...
No, I wouldn't either, but then again, I was not a huge growing up with the original series sort of kid, so...
Sure.
That's a little bit before my time. Renee Echevarria talks about how he thought this was a really different, really clever science fiction premise with a twist, and the story has this nice built-in clock element to it. And it was also, in addition to being a nice twist on time travel, it could be done as a bottle show to save money, I guess except for the big explosion.
Yeah. It didn't really feel like a very much of a bottle.
But in the original story, it's Odo who jumps forward in time to witness the destruction of Deep Space Nine. But Echevarria says that they changed that because they felt they'd done too many Odo stories this season. And then someone else comments that O'Brien was the perfect person for something like this because people can relate to him because he's just so human.
It's like, yeah, that O'Brien, he just keeps watching himself die.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have the best time
yeah.
Once he transfers to Deep Space Nine.
It's gotta take a psychological toll, you'd think, but he just rolls with it.
Yeah, he's his wife leaves him with his daughter for months at a time. He gets duplicated by a weird alien race, and then watches that duplicate die.
Right.
It never ends.
Yep. That man is very familiar with what he looks like dead by now. He's just like, all right. Oh, there's me dead again. All right, okay.
It's like, yep, that's what I look like when I'm dead, all right. I don't even need to check for a pulse. I've seen this before.
Anyway, we can jump into ratings whenever you want.
Yeah, let's do that. What would you rate this one?
I like a good sci-fi story.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mind that it has a little bit of a next-gen feel to the story every once in a while. It just annoys the heck out of me because the time travel rules almost work until the end when they just go totally bananas and they're like, actually just whatever we want to happen will happen.
Yeah, that's one of the complaints that one of the people in here, one of the reviewers makes, is it's like, look, there's all of this technobabble and the made up science that sounds clever, but it isn't because it only works at all because the script just says it does.
And also it feels a little busy with all the like crazy Klingon and Romulan intrigue and all this stuff.
Yeah. And
then just sort of forgets about that at points. It's kind of weird. I don't know. It's kind of woven in good, but just like the whole Klingon plot that goes on for a while until they're like, okay, we're done with this now. We're going to move on to something else.
You do get to Cisco. You do get to see Cisco turn to the Romulans and be like, "Get the hell off my station!" Essentially.
Oh yeah, I guess that's always nice to see. But to me, it all boils down to the insane twist of them killing off O'Brien and bringing the alternate universe version of O'Brien to take his place. Because that's basically what it is. Like,
yeah,
we're seeing like branching timelines or universes or something, which is just so bananas and awesome, but also kind of just like ridiculous and pointless. That I love that
they did it with Harry Kim later.
I just love that they like went there. So despite many things I find annoying about this episode, I'm going to give it a full commander just for that.
Okay.
I was originally going to give it a lieutenant commander, but then when I was reviewing the episode, I was like, this is just so wild. Like, you know what? I'm going to do a slow clap. You can have a full commander for. Because there's times when we're like, they should have done this like crazy sci-fi twist or whatever, and they don't do it.
Yeah.
And boy, they did it. They did it this time.
So it's funny because this says that was part of Ronald Moore's uncredited rewrite. It was his idea to kill off O'Brien and replace him with other O'Brien.
Uh-huh.
And it was like, Moore was also part of the writing staff on the Next Generation episode, Second Chances, where the team wanted to kill off Riker and replace him with his own transporter duplicate. So they didn't get to do it there. So they're like, now we're going to do it.
Finally, Ronald D. Moore gets his wish.
I wonder if he wrote on that Voyager episode where they do that to Harry.
Did he write on Voyager?
I kind of don't think he did, but
yeah.
I searched for Harry Kim killed, and the first article is a screen rant. All 4 times Harry Kim died.
Nice.
I want to know about the one time that I'm looking for. Brandon Braga wrote it, and David Livingston directed it. No Ronald D. Moore involvement.
Okay. So just somebody saw that and took inspiration from it, maybe.
Yep.
It's like Ronald D. Moore got that out of his system, so someone else had to
he was done.
Pick up that torch. Anyway, how would you rate this episode?
So I was also kind of debating between Lieutenant Commander and Commander on this one. I don't like the time travel inconsistencies don't bother me as much because by the end of this episode, I'm just like, I'm along for the ride. Yeah. I'm like, whatever. Yeah. You technobabble and it works.
Yeah,
I get it.
You said radiation and singularities enough times that, okay, I'll roll with it, whatever.
Yeah, like if I haven't bought in by this time, then it's all over anyway. So just, I am, as I said, annoyed that you don't put 2 and 2 together, that there's Romulans and there's a singularity and maybe these are related. That seems to be general knowledge at this point, although the Federation only learned about it relatively recently, because I think it's like season 6 of Next Generation, when Ro and LaForge get phased out of whatever. What was that episode called?
That they learned that Romulan warbirds run on singularity engines?
Or that Romulan ships use singularity engines. Oh. I'm pretty sure that's when that happens. Anyway, so yeah, that part annoys me a little bit, but overall, I think that it's a fun. I don't love it quite as much as apparently the people who worked on it do, where they're like, oh, we were so clever and we did this like completely new thing that no one's ever done before. I don't love it that much. But
right. That's a little like self-indulgent, but
yeah, I quite enjoy it. I think it's fun, and then I like the Romulans and doing Romulan stuff. You know, they can't just be here to get the information that they were promised. They have to be up to shady Romulan shit. And it doesn't even seem to be the Tal Shiar this time. It's just like, normal Romulans doing normal Romulan stuff. And I also like that. I don't know that we've ever seen Klingon intelligence before this episode. This may be the introduction of that, because it's not in their nature. Yeah. But it's interesting that like Deep Space Nine is the first place that you can do something like that, where like intelligence operatives from various factions are showing up and like trying to spy on each other. Because I mean, you could do it on the Next Generation, but it's very rare for like random aliens to just be hanging around on the ship, on the Enterprise. So
that's true.
That aspect is an interesting, I feel like, DS9 sort of thing, where it's like the Casablanca of the galaxy almost, where all these different people can show up and do crazy shit. And so I think I'm going to go full commander on this one. I think it's fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like when the Romulans are around, just assume that something is going down.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like be constantly operating under that assumption until the Romulans leave.
Yeah. probably there's at least one cloaked ship somewhere in the vicinity.
Yeah.
Like, just assume.
Yeah. Just all the weirdest shenanigans you can think of, like, they're gonna do it.
Also, it was a little bit of a stretch to be like, we want to close the wormhole, but we don't want it traced back to us, so we're going to blow up the station so that it can never be traced back to us. And I'm like, honestly, just go and shoot the wormhole or whatever you were planning to do to it. Like, what's anybody going to do to you?
Yeah, well, I don't know. That might lead to some unpleasantness. But...
I mean, like, diplomatically, yeah, the Federation is probably not going to be super happy, although really it's Bajoran territory, and who cares if the Bajorans are mad at you because it's one system and they're not particularly powerful. But the thing is, like, the Federation and the Romulans already don't get along.
Yeah.
They have, like, a very shaky, like, non-aggression sort of thing set up, but the Federation's not going to go to war over, oh, you closed the wormhole, because you can't undo that through a war, so you're just going to have to accept it. There's no point in fighting about it after it's done.
Although, like, was it in this episode, or was it mentioned recently that, like, I'm not remembering where I heard this, but, like, they were trying to improve relations with the Romulans, and we're talking about disestablishing the neutral zone or whatever?
Oh, that was, like, an alternate version of the Burial episode, where instead of Burial, it was going to be somebody who was here negotiating to get rid of the neutral zone.
Okay, that's okay. Yeah, that's what you were talking about. Okay.
Yeah.
The thing about the time travel rules, though, is it's just like they almost established really good rules, right? But then they just kind of threw them out the window at the end. And it's always satisfying when they they kind of like establish some rules and then they play around within those rules. But in this one, they were just like, you know what? And now he can just travel back and forth, and he can tell himself to travel back in time, whatever. Yeah,
it definitely, like when they're like, we can manipulate how far you go, that's a little bit like,
Yeah.
I mean, their whole thing was like, it happens when this singularity gets to this particular point in its orbit and does this thing. So I could almost buy if they're like, we can manipulate this so that it's a different point in the orbit, and that will change how far you go. But when he gets there and just hands it to the other guy to go back automatically, that's when I'm just like, oh, really? But whatever. We're at the end of the episode at that point, and so I'm just riding the wave to the end.
It's just like, okay. Like, have you ever seen the movie Primer?
I think I did at some point. I don't remember much.
It just, like, it's so meticulous with its rules, and then, like, you have to watch that movie, like, 5 times to fully understand what's going on. But, it sets up its rules so well of, like, how the time travel works and everything, and there's the great twist when it turns out there's a second time machine, and because we've been walked through how these time machines work and how all this stuff works, and, like, there's a second time machine that got turned on before the other time machine, so this time machine can go back even earlier, and then they can, like, smash the other time machine, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's, like, a great twist. Spoilers for that movie. That's when it's really fun, when, like, they really think all this stuff through and they pay it off in a really cool way.
Well, yeah, and that's true of all, like, science fiction stuff, or even fantasy stuff. There's, like, going back to Brandon Sanderson now.
Uh-huh.
There's he has what he calls Sanderson's laws of magic when he's writing using magic in one of these fantasy worlds. And so the first law is an author's ability to solve conflict with magic is directly proportional to how well the reader understands that magic.
Yeah.
So the more you understand how it works, the more satisfying it is when they use it to solve something, because it's like, oh, I understood. Like, you're not introducing some weird extra rule that means that they can suddenly save the day. If you understand how it works, then you're like, oh, I could have seen this coming if I had extrapolated from what I know about how this magic works.
I mean, it's just always more like, especially in science fiction stories, when you, like, that revolve around a device, or by device I mean, like, storytelling device. It's like the more you're able to, like, hold to that and then, like, play around within the rules of that, that's when you get a lot of the really satisfying stuff. Okay, so, like, Terminator and Terminator 2, where, like, in Terminator 1, they establish very clearly that when you go back in time, like, you just wind up, like, doing what you were always destined to do or whatever. And then Terminator 2, they're like, oh no, you can change the future, no problem. It's like, wait, what? It's like, that stuff, you're like, okay, you're not taking your own stuff seriously anymore.
That's true. I'd kind of forgotten to that because I don't watch Terminator very often. Yeah. Terminator 2 is the good one.
Yeah, I mean, Terminator 2 is a great movie. I will say that. But when you afterwards, when you're thinking about it, you're like, oh wait, doesn't this kind of like completely undo the whole like twist of Terminator 1? But
that's a good point. Yeah. Now I'm looking at lists of the best time travel movies to see to see what people think about this. Although this list by The Guardian is not like, their number 1 is Back to the Future Part 2, and then we got like number 4 is Looper, and Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is number 5.
Sure.
I have trouble taking this list seriously. Let's see. Oh, the Collider.com has Primer as number 15 and Terminator is number 14. So. Idiocracy. I didn't even remember that was time travel, honestly. It's been a long time since I watched that.
Well, I don't think I've ever seen it, but I know the premise. Because isn't it... I mean, it's basically like a, Frozen Man story, but he wakes up in the future where everybody's totally stupid.
Oh, yeah. I guess I didn't think of Frozen Guy as time travel, but it is in a way. Yeah. So, 12 Monkeys. Yeah, okay. Yeah. That's a good one. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Groundhog Day.
Sure.
Timeline, no. It's a terrible movie. Ninja Turtles 3, why would you even do that? Okay.
Oh, why is that on a best list of anything?
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's not a good idea.
I will say about the Back to the Future, like, one of the things that makes Back to the Future so great is, like, they just do not care about rules at all.
Nope.
And will change them on a whim.
Yeah, whatever is fun and interesting right now is how time travel works.
And you're just like, okay. It's like, you never made me any promises that this was like a deep sci-fi, like, serious concept. And I don't hold you to that.
When the guy was trying really hard not to sleep with his own mother, I was just like, okay, we're not taking it seriously. I get it.
It's like, okay, flux capacitor, I'm rolling with it.
Yep.
Anyway, just some thoughts about time travel, I guess. I guess we better wrap it up there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that does it for us today. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. As always, you can check out the description. Maybe I put something interesting in there. I don't know. Maybe something about Brandon Sanderson is down there. I don't know. But I'm Fletcher. About to say goodbye is Data.
See ya.
And until we meet again, don't forget, whenever you see that Negus stick, kiss that Negus stick.